Donald has been bragging again about some cognitive tests he's taken recently and equating them with IQ tests and aptitude tests. That's not what they are. In fact, he also said he nailed his MRI, by which I suppose he means the results of the MRI were negative.
Donald Trump is bragging again, this time about his cognitive tests. He calls them IQ tests, aptitude tests, proof of genius. But in reality, they're nothing of the sort. In one interview, he even said he nailed his MRI, as if medical imaging were a test you could ace. It's like boasting that you passed your X-ray. His claims raise an obvious question. Why is he even being given cognitive and neurological tests in the first place?
I mean, bragging about MRI results are literally like saying you aced your X-ray. Now, I am not a neurologist, but from what I understand, giving somebody an MRI in conjunction with cognitive tests is typically the protocol a doctor follows.
Doctors typically order MRIs alongside cognitive tests when they suspect neurological issues, sometimes even after a stroke. Yet once again, the Trump White House has kept the details hidden. Instead of clarity, we get theater. And Donald plays his favorite role, the misunderstood genius. Since 2017, he has paraded his perfect scores as proof of superior intelligence.
If they're worried the patient has had a stroke. But again, I don't know, and of course, the White House isn't telling us anything. Donald is pretending that passing these basic cognitive tests is a big deal, and he's been pretending that since 2017. That's the first time he took what is called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, or MoCA, as it's also known.
The test in question is called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, or MoCA. It's not an IQ test. It's a basic screening tool for cognitive decline. Anything above 26 out of 30 is considered normal. In other words, it's designed for healthy people to pass easily. Scoring 30 doesn't make you a genius. It just means your brain can still handle everyday mental tasks.
As some of you may know, I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and back when I was still working in the field, one of the things I specialized in was administering psychological test batteries. This included scoring the results, analyzing the data, and then diagnosing my patients.
As someone with a PhD in clinical psychology, I can tell you these tests measure basic functions like memory, orientation, and attention. They ask simple things. Identify a picture of a camel, count backward by sevens, or recall a few words after a short delay. It's not advanced thinking. It's mental maintenance.
Mostly the tests I used were standardized intelligence and achievement tests, which were then supplemented by subjective tests like the Rorschach and something called the thematic apperception test. But when I worked on the admissions ward of a state psychiatric hospital,
when Donald bragged about performance years ago, he proudly repeated the 5 words he'd been given: person, woman, man, camera, TV. Remember that? The irony is, those words wouldn't even appear together on a legitimate test. Cognitive exams avoid using words that belong to the same category. Person and man are too similar. So whatever test Donald claims to have taken, it wasn't quite right.
My patients had extraordinarily serious psychiatric disorders, and in some cases, I needed to include some neurological tests in the test battery. It wasn't my specialty, but I became conversant with how such tests were scored and interpreted.
Bragging about passing a cognitive exam is, in itself, a red flag, because if you understand the purpose of such a test, you wouldn't see it as an achievement. These tests are designed to identify impairment, not brilliance. When Trump celebrates his results, he's actually revealing a lack of self-awareness and a deep need for validation. The act of boasting becomes its own diagnosis.
Although I never used the MoCA, it is very similar to other tests used to screen for mild cognitive dysfunction. The one we used is called the mini mental state exam. Again, they're very similar. And these assess things like short-term memory, orientation, language, calculation, and attention.
Imagine it, a grown man, a former president, treating a medical screening like a school quiz. He probably even got a gold star from his doctor and slapped it on his refrigerator. Behind the humor lies a sad truth. Trump's obsession with external praise exposes his psychological fragility. It's not confidence. It's chronic insecurity dressed as arrogance. And now, the alarms are getting louder. Trump's recent interviews and speeches reveal increasing confusion, verbal slips, and erratic reasoning. Yet the media continues to gloss over his cognitive decline. The signs are all there, flashing red, but many choose to ignore them for political convenience.
To make himself feel good about himself, the doctor probably stuck a gold star in the test, and then Donald took it home and put it on his refrigerator with a magnet. That's what a pathetic figure he is. Also, it reminds me that he's obsessed with magnets, but that's a story for another day. But before we go on, it is imperative that we continue to focus on Donald's failing cognitive health.
During a conversation with reporters aboard Air Force One, Trump returned to his favorite topic, the goddamn cognitive test. This time, he compared himself to Democratic lawmakers, calling them low IQ. He specifically named Representatives Jasmine Crockett and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, both women of color. His comments were not only inaccurate, they were dripping with racism and misogyny. Trump described his test as very hard, saying it started with identifying animals like a tiger, an elephant, and a giraffe, and got progressively more difficult. It's absurd. Cognitive tests don't evolve from zoo flashcards to cryptic riddles. There's no level where you're asked to name a pangolin to prove genius. His misunderstanding of the process shows, once again, that he never grasped what the test was measuring.
Well, he's been at it again. Speaking to reporters on Air Force One while on his way to Asia, Donald started talking about the goddamn cognitive test. Why is this important? Well, for one, why is Donald still being given cognitive tests?
Even more bizarre is Trump's claim that he decided to take the test. That's not how medicine works. You don't stroll into your doctor's office and request a cognitive exam just because. These tests are administered when there's concern about mental decline. The fact that Trump keeps bringing them up suggests both defensiveness and denial. And of course, no Trump tirade would be complete without projection. He labels women of color as low IQ while flaunting his own supposed genius, a tactic meant to reinforce old hierarchies of power. The racism isn't just offensive, it's deliberate. It's his way of reminding his followers who he thinks belongs on top. When AOC fired back, she joked that she'd love to see Trump's clock drawing from the test, one of the simplest parts of the exam. Her wit cut deeper than any insult, because behind the humor lies a serious question. What would that clock look like? Would it reveal confusion, forgetfulness, or something more troubling? To hold him accountable, I'll issue a challenge. Donald, let's both take the same cognitive test, publicly. I'll even throw in an IQ test, an achievement test, and maybe even a Rorschach ink blot for fun. Let's see whose results tell the real story. You can even pick the golf course afterward. I'm confident I'd still beat you, and I don't even play. But jokes aside, this is serious. The health and stability of a man who once held nuclear codes and seeks to hold them again should not be a punchline. The red flags are waving. The warning signs are bright, and pretending not to see them is national negligence. Trump's cognitive illusion isn't proof of genius. It's proof of decay.